Welcome to The Explainer. We're all about turning really complex ideas into visual stories that, actually make sense.
So let's start with the feeling I'm pretty sure we all know. That persistent, nagging anxiety. You know the one. It's that little voice in the back of your head constantly asking if you're good enough, successful enough, or just enough.
All right, so here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to break down the anatomy of modern anxiety. Then, we'll zoom in on Taiwan for a specific diagnosis. And finally, we'll explore what a healthier future could even look like. Ready? Let's get into it.
Okay, first up, the anatomy of anxiety. And the big idea here is that it's not just in your head. To really get a handle on this widespread stress, we need a different kind of tool. The book we're looking at today argues that this isn't just a bunch of us having personal problems. Nope, it's a symptom of something much, much bigger happening in our society.
So the key concept here is something called social evaluative threat, or SET for short. What is that? Well, it's that very specific, gut-wrenching fear of being judged negatively by other people. Think about the stress you feel right before a huge presentation, or job interview, or, hey, even just posting a picture on social media. It's all about the fear of looking incompetent or unimportant, or just plain not good enough.
And get this isn't just some vague feeling in your head. It has a real, measurable, physical impact. I mean, look at this data. Studies have actually found that when we're facing this social evaluative threat, our main stress hormone, cortisol, can spike over 3 times higher than with other kinds of stress. That's not just in your mind. That's a powerful biological reaction happening in your body.
So the big question is, why does this feeling seem so intense today? Well, the theory goes that economic inequality basically pours gasoline on this fire. Imagine the social pyramid. Inequality makes it way, way steeper. The rewards at the top look huge, and the fear of falling, well, that becomes terrifying. This constant pressure kicks a really ancient, primal part of our brain into overdrive. It's called the dominance behavioral system, and its whole job is to figure out where we stand in the pecking order. Now, living under this kind of constant pressure, it does a number on our psychology, and it tends to push us towards one of two extremes. On one hand, some of us internalize all of it. This can lead to things like depression, anxiety, a whole lot of self-doubt. We basically turn that judgment inward on ourselves. But then you've got the other side of the coin. Other people do the complete opposite. They build up this external kind of narcissistic defense mechanism, feeling this constant need to project an image of being superior, all to protect a really fragile ego underneath. Okay, so that's the general theory. But how does all this play out specifically in Taiwan? Let's dive in and take a look at our social X-ray of the local landscape.
All right, a great place to start is with this idea called the Great Gatsby Curve. It sounds fancy, but the concept is actually pretty simple and really powerful. It basically shows that the more income inequality a society has, the harder it is for people to climb the economic ladder. In other words, your parents' income becomes a much, much bigger factor in determining your own future.
And yep, this trend absolutely holds true for Taiwan. If you look at the research, the data from 1996 to 2010 is pretty clear. As the gap between the rich and poor got wider, social mobility got worse. It literally became harder for kids to earn more than their parents did. What that does is it solidifies these class structures and makes that whole dream of moving on up feel a lot further away.
And man, this pressure, it starts young. I mean, really young. There are studies on Taiwanese middle schools that show something pretty worrying. It turns out that a lot of the most motivated students, well, they aren't just driven by a love of learning. Nope, their motivation is actually tied to a deep, deep fear of being judged negatively. So that drive to succeed gets all tangled up with this awful dread of failing.
You can see this anxiety playing out in all these modern arenas, can't you? Think about social media. It's basically a non-stop engine for comparison, where we're constantly seeing these perfect, curated lives and feeling like we don't measure up. Body image, that's become just another battleground for status. And what's really tragic is that this pressure can actually start to eat away at social trust, even fueling prejudice as everyone scrambles to hold on to their own spot on the ladder.
Okay, so we've laid out the diagnosis and seen the effects. That's the tough part. Now for the hopeful part. What's the treatment plan? How do we start building a society that's healthier and a lot less anxious?
So you might be thinking, okay, just tax the rich more and have better welfare. And yeah, the book says that stuff definitely helps. But it's kind of like just treating the symptoms. To really get at the root of the problem, to cure the disease, not just manage it, we have to tackle inequality at its source. We're talking about the income people get before any taxes or benefits are even in the picture.
And a huge piece of that puzzle, that source of inequality, is what's happening inside our companies. I'm talking specifically about the absolutely massive runaway gap between what top executives get paid and what the average worker makes. And let's be clear, this isn't some small detail. It's one of the main engines driving inequality in our society today.
Just look at these numbers. The scale of this is just staggering. In many big corporations, the pay ratio between the CEO and the average worker has exploded. We're talking anywhere from 200 to 1 all the way up to 400 to 1. I mean, think about the message that sends every single day that one person is worth literally hundreds of times more than another. It's no wonder that fuels a constant, gnawing sense of social evaluative threat.
So what's the prescription? It's a pretty bold but really interesting idea called economic democracy. The goal is to basically rewire our economy to be fairer right from the inside out. So what does that look like? It means giving employees a real voice in how their companies are run. We're talking seats on the board, a say in pay decisions, and it also means giving them a real stake in the company's success through things like employee ownership and co-ops.
Now, before you think this is just some pie-in-the-sky fantasy, you should know it's already happening. There are democratic workplaces out there, like the famous Mondragon Cooperative in Spain, that have been thriving for decades. And just look at their pay ratio. They keep it around 5 to 1. That's proof. It's proof that a more equal, more humane, and still incredibly successful way of doing business is totally possible.
And this gets right to the heart of the psychological treatment. When you transform a workplace from just a rigid hierarchy where people are basically seen as assets into a real community where everyone has a voice and a stake, well, that directly tackles that status anxiety we've been talking about. It builds trust, it gives people a sense of control back, it affirms that everyone has value. Suddenly, work can change from being a main source of our stress into a source of dignity and real belonging.
So if there's one thing to take away, it's this. The anxiety so many of us feel isn't just a personal failing. It's a social signal, a big one, telling us that our system is seriously out of balance. But by tackling inequality at its very roots, we have a real shot at building a society that's not just fair, but fundamentally healthier for all of us, mentally and socially. So I'll leave you with a question to think about. What's the first step we could take, not just to grow our economy, but to grow our collective well-being?